Let's talk about smoking and health, though, because the government is apparently backing a new study to track the long-term effects of vaping on young people, and they're going to start launching an anti-vaping campaign aimed at teenagers. I think there was a smoking bill that was meant to go through Parliament under Rishi Sunak, but it kind of got lost in the depths of the last Parliament when the Tories were still in, because they called an election. Hazel Cheeseman is here. Hazel, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Whatever happened to that bill that was going to be pushed through by the Tories? Is this a sort of a similar version of it, or is this something different?
Yeah, the bill came back after the election, so it didn't make it through, as you say, because the election was called quite early. But the Labour Party brought it back, and it was in their manifesto and in the Conservative Party manifesto. And it's final stage in the House of Commons, which we'd expect to see in March. And then on top of that, the government has announced this study today, long-term study looking at the impact of vaping on children over the long term, which will really add to the evidence that we currently have around vaping, which we know is much less harmful than smoking. It's important that people that are currently smoking and thinking about switching know that it's much less harmful. But if you don't smoke and if you're underage, we think that there probably will be risks from using these products long term, and this study will help us to understand what those might be.
Yeah, it's not that it's not harmful, it's just that it's not as harmful as smoking. So, I mean, I suppose it's a question of priorities, really, isn't it? I mean, you don't really want anybody smoking vapes, but the trouble is there will be those, I'm not particularly one of them, I'm not particularly zealous about it, but, those who say, well, as long as it's legal, why shouldn't people do it?
Well, I think it's important to distinguish between vaping and smoking. Smoking kills around 2 in 3 long-term users. I mean, it is like a unique product on the market. It would definitely not be put on the market today if it was, suddenly to be invented.
But nobody's willing to ban it, though, are they? That's the problem.
Well, the bill before Parliament will phase out the sale of tobacco to the next generation. I mean, that's the bill that Rishi Sunak had tabled when he was Prime Minister, and what the government has brought back with additional measures around vaping.
Right.
So,
is that still a thing? This is the one where you can be 40 and you can't buy cigarettes, but your mate who's 41 can.
Well, it's part of this strategy to end smoking in this country. So by the time, the government modelling suggests that by the time we get to the point where people are 40 and 39, frankly, it's a bit irrelevant because smoking is effectively zero in that population.
But would it really be, though? I mean, I know it may sound like something that you want to do and it might be good for the health of the nation, but, marijuana's illegal, but there's more people smoking it now in London certainly in London than ever. Cocaine's illegal, but people get their hands on it. There will still be cigarettes that get sold, won't there?
Well, I think there's a distinction to be made between making, the illegal drugs market and what the plan is around tobacco, which is a kind of phased out sale. It won't criminalise the individuals. It will say it's illegal to sell these products. And there is a clear strategy. But that won't stop
them being sold, though, is my point, will it?
But that's why on its own it's not sufficient. And the bill is wider than this, and the government strategy and the investment being made is wider. Obviously, from our point of view, there's more that the government needs to do, but it's completely realistic that if you put this measure in place alongside the other support that we know a lot about how to get people to stop smoking, it's just a question of will and investment, then there is no reason why we can't achieve this goal where people are no longer smoking. I mean, frankly, it's very different. Nicotine is a very different drug from cocaine, marijuana, etc. It doesn't people become addicted and they need to kind of replace that chemical in their brain. They get the withdrawal symptoms, but it doesn't give the same highs and lows as some of these other illegal drugs. It seems very plausible that you can phase this out of British consumption, make it a footnote of history, and particularly given the impact that it has on health, on society, on our economy. This is a
well, marijuana and cocaine also have a terrible effect on people's health too, don't they? And I mean, there's sort of epidemic marijuana usage in this country. London, I think, is the cocaine capital of Europe. There's an awful lot of people doing an awful lot of things that are bad for them, and in some ways maybe worse than the effects of them may be worse than people smoking. I mean, people don't normally smoke a cigarette and then go and attack other people, do they?
Well, marijuana is, when you smoke marijuana, it will have a very similar impact on your body to smoking tobacco. And in this country, most of the time people when they smoke marijuana, they're also smoking tobacco. So, these things are not completely independent of each other, But the phased out sale of tobacco will probably help to support some of the efforts to reduce, particularly the consumption of marijuana or the smoking of marijuana.
They won't, though, will they?
Fewer people are smoking.
I'm sure, Hazel. Listen, I'm not trying to be difficult, and I'm sure your aims are very good. But I think you're underestimating the black market in this country. You can already buy a packet of what you might call illegal cigarettes for about £4. Pretty much anywhere in this country that you want to. You don't even have to pay the tax that you're now paying, and I know a lot of young people do that.
Well, the illegal market for tobacco has been declining over the last 20 years because the government has been pretty effective actually in driving that market down. It hasn't been obliterated, and of course, as always, there's more that could be done. But the notion that you can't regulate this product because it will increase the black market is an argument that the tobacco industry has made for 20 years.
I'm not saying you can't regulate
20 years,
it.
The illegal market has declined.
I'm not saying you can't regulate it. I'm saying you can't do away with it. I'm just saying I think it's unrealistic to expect to do away with tobacco smoking altogether because it will always be there.
Well, I think, Mike, if you have us back in 20 years, we'll see where we've got to.
If I'm still working in 20 years, I'll buy you a pint. Thank you very much indeed, Hazel Cheeseman there, Chief Executive Action on Smoking and Health. I'm not sure that you can ever do away with things. I mean, if you could ban tobacco, I'm not suggesting that you should. I mean, I'm not one of those that thinks you should ban really very much of anything. If it's a choice, then it's a choice, isn't it? People who smoke tend to pay an awful lot of tax. In fact, those who say that they're a drain on the NHS, they're actually talking absolute and utter rubbish, because if you are a smoker and you do pay tax on the cigarettes you buy, you more than cover whatever it will be that with the treatment you might need for your lung cancer.